If you're new here, my name is Bryan Jenks, and today I'm actually going to give you a special treat. Markdown is a very ubiquitously used file specification. It is a plain text document format, which means exactly what it means. It's plain text. So if you're on Windows, you can open Notepad, start typing text, save it as a .md file. That's Markdown. That's it. There's no fonts, there's no formatting, there's no colors, there's no rich text, bold, italic, whatever. But the plain text is processed by other applications and tools that then apply those things based on a specific set of rules. Markdown is an amazing file format. It's very useful and it's used all over the tech industry, especially on places like GitHub, where all of your README and documentation is usually done with Markdown files. Now this video is going to be a step away from some of my normal, usual content, because this was actually intended to be a part of my Obsidian course, my comprehensive Obsidian course. But since I have, abandoned that project because I cannot, deal with the bandwidth issues that I have right now with that, more explanation about that in the card. I never know where to point. And I'm basically just going to release this. Enjoy. That's it. So if you want a comprehensive course on all the cool things about Markdown, stay tuned and hopefully you enjoy it. The best ways to support the channel are, if you're going to do it on an ongoing basis, GitHub sponsors because they take no fees, followed by Patreon. If you're going to do like a one-time thing, buy me a coffee, PayPal, or just fine. And if you just want to support me without any money involved, the best thing you can do is like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and that's it. So the next section is going to be quite a lot of material. We're going to cover Markdown, the syntax of the original specification, all the different pieces we can actually use in Obsidian, because there's just like a mishmash of a bunch of different pieces of it, and a lot of other plugins and extensions added. But what is Markdown? What is the original specification? What are all these extensions? What does Obsidian have that certain other specifications don't have? And how can we use that? It's a lot to cover. Now, the Help Vault does have a section on Markdown syntax specifically. Let's see, Markdown. No, that's not it, but I think it's not syntax either. But we'll figure out. But the Help Vault has a great resource on how to actually write in Markdown. I forget exactly where it is exactly, but we're going to cover all of that and then all the things that it doesn't cover, because there's even more that is not explicitly mentioned. But we're going to go over each individual piece of Markdown, everything that I know that we can do inside of it, and even later on when we get into the custom inserted HTML, we're gonna hack on Markdown and make it do some pretty wild stuff. And really, the sky's the limit, because Markdown is basically just simplified syntax for HTML being run through a processor when you render it to other formats. And yeah, it's just a whole new world of just possibilities when you're using Markdown files and plain text. So we'll get into that next. So in the Obsidian Help Vault, there's a note called Format Your Notes, and it will actually show you a bunch of the cheat sheets for the Markdown syntax, images, links, block quotes, math, code chunks, all different types of syntax. And there's even more that we can actually customize on top of all of this. There's mermaid diagrams, all kinds of things. So we're actually going to cover all of this step by step. And ultimately, Markdown was a minimal format and specification for pre-processing for HTML. Basically, I wanted to say an H1 heading for HTML, but not have to write as many characters, because you can see right here, it says this is a heading, H1, heading 1, because it has a single octothorpe or a hashtag, depending on what you call it. So this basically says this is a level 1 heading. In HTML, that is an H1 opening tag, heading 1, H1 closing tag, and now you have the exact same result. But that's a lot of extra typing. So the whole point of Markdown was to make this easier to manage, easier syntax for the same results, so I could easily just say, hey, I know that's an H1 heading, but send this plain text document through a processor and now render it as an HTML H1 heading. So basically this is the output, this is the input. So this means that Markdown is basically an environment where HTML can work. You just saw me do an H1 tag. And we're going to open up that whole can of worms later and all the types of ways we can bend Markdown and use both. But this is a way of just getting a simplified syntax for the beautiful results you can do with HTML and CSS and all that stuff, but with a very minimalist syntax, easy to understand, easy to grasp, walk in, start getting some results, and not get too bogged down in trying to understand code and programming and languages. Now, if you're into that, welcome to the club. I am too. But this is an easy way of creating and formatting your notes with a much less complex syntax. And now with the advent of tools like Pandoc, which is a document converter program, it's a very ubiquitously used program that converts Markdown and other file types to other file types. So like Markdown, you convert to HTML, LaTeX, presentations, PowerPoint, Word. It's literally endless. The overlap of different file specifications that can convert to others with Pandoc is so overlapped and interwoven like a graph view in Obsidian that it literally is too busy to even follow any of the lines. It's basically, you can convert anything to anything, or really find an edge case, but Pandoc is really useful. And if you write Markdown, it means you can basically send your output into whatever file format you want. So keeping things in plain text in Markdown in Obsidian is a great way of future-proofing your knowledge, your work, and just keeping it simple. So the first thing I'm going to show you is I'm just going to walk through the help documentation here on Markdown before I open up my own personal research I've done on Markdown and the specifications to show you that. So we're just going to go over the simple examples just because I think these are well laid out and it's a resource. We're going to take advantage of it, and I'll explain more about these things. And when we get to my notes, you'll see some other common uses. So internal linking, this is a type of wiki syntax. Now these are called wikilinks, where we have the double brackets like this that open and self-close. Now this is a type of Markdown specification that's not part of the core original Markdown specification, but it is something that Obsidian uses, and it's not unique to Obsidian. There are other types of applications that use this type of format. Rome Research is one, Notion is now another, but also VimWiki if you use Vim and you're in the terminal. So this is not something unique to Obsidian, and it is common enough that it's not going to be something that would break the future proofing of your notes. So this is a type of link. This is not a Markdown link, this is a wiki link. And we'll get to Markdown links probably in a bit. So embeds, just like with Markdown links, an embed is just you put a exclamation point or a bang symbol in front of your note. So you can see here that we have what is Obsidian. Now this is actually embedding a particular note from a specific heading. So we could say Obsidian, what is Obsidian? Now if I hovered over, let's see, if I hovered over this note here, it's not going to show me the preview because I don't think I have that plug that turned on. But in any case, what this is doing is that this is saying, hey, find the note called Obsidian, show me the heading, what is Obsidian, and then embed it. So the embedding is done with a bang symbol in front of an ordinary wiki link or an ordinary Markdown link. Both will work in this vault and in Obsidian. Both links perform the exact same actions. There's just some minute differences that we will probably cover later, but just to give you a brief example, Wikilinks, you can have spaces like this. Markdown links, you can't have spaces. You have to represent them with the escape code, which is %20. Really weird, but that is what you have to do. Markdown links also are more characters in a way because you actually have to have your display text and then your actual link. So you're basically doubling the amount you have to type. And other than that, it's basically the same. But I prefer personally the wiki links because you can easily just quickly have your wiki link with just double brackets. It looks cleaner. You have spaces. It just looks nicer. And it's native to Obsidian, so that's why we use it. You put a bang in the front. It inserts this whole transcluded note from this heading and everything underneath that heading, and that's it. It works the same for images. If this was an image or a PDF, both work the same. You have headers. Headers are done with varying levels of hashtags or octothorpes, depending on what terminology you want to use. So you have up to 6 levels of headings with your octothorpes. 6 levels. So you just put 6 hashes. There you go. I use the template feature in Obsidian. We haven't covered that yet, I don't think. But the templates, I just do like, insert a template. I type the number 6 and it says H6 and I say yes. And it inserts 6 of these hashtags. So that way I don't have to type them all the time. But, this is a heading in Markdown. You also have different text formatting. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier about how both the asterisk and the underscore work for italic and then for bold if they're doubled. And you can combine them. So in this case, you can do a single underscore and a double asterisk. This way you can combine those. So both a bold word inside of a italic string. This is exactly how that is. And we're going to get into other things like strike through and underline later. But those are a little bit hackier solutions that you actually have to use HTML to achieve, not Markdown. So we'll look into that later because that's in a later section. We have lists, so you have unordered lists, and you also have ordered lists. So an unordered list is just done with dashes, pluses, and I think we can get away with asterisks in here, but because that's used in other text formatting, I say just avoid that. Just use the dashes, and this way it doesn't matter how deep you nest them, they're just bullet points. But if you do ordered lists, then these will actually auto reorder the number if they're all the same. So like this 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, it'll actually reorder based on levels of nesting. So here it actually starts over at 1 and 2 again, just like that. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 3A, 3B. This way it actually nests those values and numbers them correctly. So adding images, this is exactly the same way that we could do this with a Wikilink, but this one is actually using a Markdown link. We have the alternative text. I don't think it shows if I hover over it, but the alternative text is Engelbart, and then the link is actually this URL to the image file, and then a bang to make it a inserted image. Now, also with the Markdown images, we have the ability to add a pipe character here. In the Wikilinks, this is actually how we insert aliases, but with the normal Markdown links, this is actually resizing the images, and I personally never do this. I don't really mind too much about the image sizes that I insert, and I have CSS for that. But in any case, this is actually how you would change the sizing of your image file. So this is saying, hey, change it to 100 pixels wide, and that's why this one is smaller. And you just do that with a pipe after the alternative text and then your number. Now, you can also do this with a wiki link. Now, because this is coming from a URL and not a file in our vault, you have to use the Markdown link. But if this was a file in our vault, we could easily do the exact same thing by saying, hey, file.png, and that would actually insert that file and as an image if you had it in your vault, which we don't. So we also have links, and links are this is the differentiation, is that we can also just post a URL plain as it is, and you can see, yep, Obsidian.md, and the link is automatically hyperlinked. You can click this, it goes there. Or you can use a Markdown link with the square brackets and the parens. This basically allows you to put alternative text on the link and make it look nicer. So instead of saying all this junk around it, we can just say Obsidian, and the link goes to the exact same location. This way, it's just nicer looking. And if you're doing this in the HTML, it's like doing the A tag with, you have the, the source equals this URL. You need to actually select that. So that equals that URL, and then we close it off and we say Obsidian, close it off, the A tag. And so you can see it's the exact same sort of result. Sorry, not source, it's href. So then we can see we have the exact same result here with the A tag, so that we could easily just click on this hyperlink, go to Obsidian, and now we're there. That way it's easy to just go there. But we also don't have this little preview thing, but all three of these basically do the same thing. These all three link to the Obsidian website, but this is just a plain URL. This is a pretty Markdown URL, and this is the original HTML URL. But this one doesn't get that nice little, hey, we're going outside to another site, external link, little notifier. So not that I would ever type a link like this in HTML inside of a Markdown file when we have these options available. So those are actually links. But like I mentioned earlier, when you are using Markdown links, you actually have to make sure that any spaces are changed with %20. This is annoying, which is why I really hate doing this. And one thing we also can do is we can also, let's see, I know that this is also useful in Discord. Enclosing links with brackets Now, if we close this one off with brackets here, it doesn't really do anything different. It's the exact same thing. But yeah, I'm guessing this is like if we actually had a space in our URL. Yeah, but I don't really have an example for a spaced URL at the exact moment, but that might be able to escape that. But in any case, yeah. So next we have block quotes. Now I actually really enjoy using block quotes in Obsidian. Now, one thing I don't like is like this like attribution outside of the block quote. Personally, I prefer having them inside. And one cool way we can actually accomplish that is by having an additional quote here and an additional one here. And now we actually have that block quote in there. Now you can add some custom CSS, insert like an HTML tag here and shove it over to the right side or whatever. There's some cool shenanigans we're going to get into on how to actually customize these block quotes and make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and see what we can do with it. Now, one really cool thing that you can do as well is you can actually have nested block quotes. So inside here, if I actually put in another level of block quote, now you can see that we have an additional level of depth inside of this quote. And then with this, we're actually able to nest inside of those quotes. Now, if I went and reduced the level outside here to something else, it doesn't work. You actually need to have an additional break there at that level to pop that out to the original level. And I think the deeper you go, it might be a little bit more difficult to have a couple different things nested. But in any case, I think this is actually a really useful feature so that you can actually nest different pieces of quotes inside of each other. So next we also have inline code. Now you can do this with backticks, and backticks are really useful for highlighting. Like this is a word that we want to say, hey, this is inline code. So if I was going to do something like in JavaScript, I could do backticks console.log. And then we could put hello world, and then we can close off the paren. There we go. That is some JavaScript code, and it's inline, and there we go. And it looks great. So that's a way of just inline with your text, inputting something to be denoted as code. Now you can use backticks for whatever you want them to be, but this is typically used for denoting code or a different type of formatting. Now, if you did multiple different backticks, you did 3 backticks, you can create something called a code fence or a code block. Now in HTML, it looks like this. I'd never write that raw. You just use this type of syntax right here. And this actually renders as this syntax highlighted code block. And so what you're doing here is you're saying, hey, 3 backticks, this is actually a fenced code block area. And this is the language I'm using. Please highlight accordingly. Now, I could easily change this to another language, but what I might do is I might say, hey, we're going to do 3 backticks. We're going to insert 3 more down here. What language? We're going to do Python. We'll just do Python. And I'm going to say, hey, inside this code block, print hello world. I actually need to wrap that in quotes. There we go. And now you can see it's highlighted as Python. And just like that. So with this, we're able to easily change and pick different programming languages to highlight. And there are a lot of supported languages, believe me. There are many supported languages. So you can easily use this to say, hey, highlight my specific programming language. And there's a bunch of plugins to help with this, like highlighting the syntax, highlighting the code in edit mode, as well as making the preview blocks have a button for copying. So you can just copy all of them. Those are both third-party plugins we'll cover later. But these fenced code blocks, incredibly useful. And we can use those with mermaid code to make flowcharts later on. So this is going to be a incredibly useful feature that you're probably going to want to make use of later on. Now, one thing that I actually find more annoying than anything is if you just take plain text, any text, and indent it with a tab, it actually treats it as like inline code with a backtick. So if I indented this with a tab, it actually treats it like we just put backticks around this. I actually find that more annoying than anything. So you can use that if you want. I personally don't. We also have task lists. Now this is an extended piece of Markdown where we actually use a bullet system with the dashes, but then we can also use square brackets with a space. And this actually denotes a unfinished item. You can see that here. and then ones with an X or a symbol inside. I'm not sure if it has to be an X or not. Let's change it to, yeah, so it has to be an X. This will actually make checklists, and you can even like nest these. Like I can tab here, and now it's a nested block. And because it's a nested block under a completed parent, this child looks like it's completed even if the box isn't checked. But even in preview mode, you can actually watch over here in edit mode, but in preview, I can click this and it actually completes that task. And so now the X here is filled in. So you could also just make these forms for yourself with like checkboxes, and in preview mode, fill them out just by clicking them, and they're completed even though you're not in edit mode. So that can be a useful feature for you. Now we also have Markdown tables. These are kind of a pain to make because there's a lot of extra text character typing, and we'll get into the details a little bit more, but this can be really annoying. But there is there's a third-party plugin called Advanced Table Editor, I believe, that makes editing Markdown tables incredibly easy. And there's a lot of tools around Markdown table editing if you ever want to get into those. There's Vim mode to work with that. There's multiple cursors. There's a lot of tools and ways of approaching them, but we'll just get into exactly what they are and how they look. So basically a Markdown table, you have a header row, you have a separator between the header and the content, and then the content is a bunch of cells that you divide with pipes and line breaks. So you can see first header, second header right over here. We have this separator, which is why you have headers here, and then you have content, and then you have the cells separated by pipes. Now you can also have characters on the outside and have pipes externally, like on the outside of each of the cells. But if you want to save on syntax typing, you don't have to have those. But one really useful thing is if you actually put colons around some of your dividers here, you can change the alignment of the content in your cells. If you have the colon on the left, that will left align. If you have the colon on your right, it will right align. Like you can see this table here has the colon on the left, colon on the right, and if you put the colon on both sides, you can watch, let's see, let me put it here. Watch this cell right here. This will now be centered if I put the colon on both sides. So you're actually able to change the alignment of the cell content based on where the colon is placed in the Markdown table. Now, if you are actually putting Obsidian links inside of your table and you want to do an alias for a link, which requires the pipe character, you actually have to escape it, like you can see here. Escaping a character is when you use a backslash followed immediately by the character you're trying to escape. This is a way of saying, hey, whatever processor is looking at this document or this text or this code, ignore this next character. And this is a ubiquitously used piece of functionality in all different kinds of programming languages. So this is going to be something that will serve you by knowing this in multiple contexts. But basically, if you're going to put a Obsidian link with an alias inside of a table, you need to actually escape that pipe. Otherwise, it looks weird. If I remove that backslash, you got some weirdness going on here. So that's why we need to actually escape it. And now you can easily click that link and it will go to that file. So strike through. This is actually an extension that Obsidian does have. There are ways of doing this with HTML and styling it, but Obsidian actually does have strike through by itself, which you use 2 tilde characters outside to actually strike through that text. We covered highlighting earlier, but this is just done with 2 equal signs. You can select some text and you can hit equal sign twice and it will then highlight that text. That is an extension to Markdown. And then footnotes are a Markdown extension. Now there's a lot of ways we can use footnotes in here. Now I personally never do this splits form where we have our footnotes up here and then we define them later on using this syntax of saying this unique identifier. So this one is saying, _1. This is saying, hey, footnote number 1, what is my definition? Now, if you just constantly did footnote number 1, it would be based on, chronological order. Whichever one it found first, that's the one that it ties into that one. Personally, I just hate this entire approach of doing footnotes. So what this doesn't cover, and some more advanced functionality of footnotes, first of all, I also don't really like doing the custom names also. I think I've had errors with that before. It looks like it works, but I prefer to just not use that. What I actually do is I do footnotes that are just defined inline. Now, if you do this externally defined one, it saves on actually putting a bunch of extra junk inside your content, and instead will let you just define everything in line. So what that might look like is if I am actually looking at my text, we're not going to put these here. I'm just going to delete those. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to put a footnote after here is a simple footnote. So what I can do is I can actually put the caret outside, put the square brackets, and inside of the square brackets say, here is my footnote. And now at the bottom of my page, my footnote is now linked to here is my footnote. It'll take me right back to that link. So in this case, I'm able to inline define what that footnote is. This can make your text look a little bit busier, but I prefer to have it all defined explicitly right there in one place instead of having it split and having some sort of weird aberrant behavior happen later on. This is my personal preference, but both of these types of functionality exist. So you can make use of whatever you want. Explicitly define their meaning afterwards, or inline definition by putting the caret outside and first in front of the link or the footnote. So that is footnotes. And let's see, what else do we have here? We also have LaTeX math. Oh, it defined it right here as well. But yes, we have LaTeX math. Now this is using a library called Mathjax, I believe. So Mathjax is a way of using LaTeX math equations inside of web pages, or in this case, Markdown, because Markdown is basically simplified HTML. So if you want inline math inline along with your text, same text size, you can do single dollar signs and then your math equation. If you want to do a centered equation formula, you need to actually do double dollar signs, and inside of that, that is your LaTeX equation. Now you can't do it like a code fence and have like double dollar here and then double dollar there, and then inside do pi. Well, actually, it looks like you can. Never mind. So I thought you couldn't. But I think we're encountering some issues with this. But this one is actually having the beginning and end wrapped above it. So I guess you can just explicitly do it this way. There is also another form of notation for LaTeX math where you were doing like escaping some square brackets. And I don't think this one is used in Obsidian for obvious reasons, other than like, we use the square brackets in Obsidian for the actual purpose of links and Markdown links. So we don't actually use this one in here, but I think in actual LaTeX we do use links like this. And I may go into LaTeX a little bit more later on as like an extension to this course over time. But for now, I'm going to focus on core Obsidian stuff. But this is how you might do like math equations. If you want them centered in the middle, it's double dollars. If you want them inline, it's single dollar signs. If you want to use dollar signs in text, like saying, hey, diagrams, they make you a lot of money, we're going to put dollar, dollar, dollar. Well, now stuff looks weird. So what you can do is you can actually put backslashes to escape those dollars. Like I talked about earlier, backslash to escape things. Don't process this. And we can actually backslash escape those dollar signs so they display as plain text. So that's when you might actually want to use that feature. So later on, we're going to be doing a whole section on just Mermaid because I've made a whole video about it before, but the type of stuff you can do with Mermaid is incredibly powerful, and I'm learning more about it all the time, but it can be a really powerful resource for you. So Mermaid diagrams are already, the functionality is here. By default, it's already included. All you need to do is make a code fence with 3 backticks, and the language is just Mermaid. Now, Mermaid is actually a JavaScript library. Normally, Mermaid code is written with and in JavaScript, but there are plugin versions for like R Markdown using the diagram R package, or in Markdown. In this case, we're going to use the exact same syntax. This is exactly the same as I would type in R Markdown, except I would pass this string to a function. But in either case, we can make these beautiful flowcharts, sequence diagrams, journey charts, pie charts. There are a ton of possibilities. We'll cover all of that stuff way in depth later on. But all you need to know for now is that we can denote these different flowcharts by doing a code fence with Mermaid as the language, and the correct syntax yields the correct results. And then that's all they cover for the Markdown syntax. Now there's more. There is so much more with the syntax for their Markdown, and I'm honestly just going to show you my notes that I have on it. Now, let me go actually to my Obsidian Vault here. So what I have on Markdown is a lot of individual things. So there's a bunch of stuff that I've grabbed note-wise that's going to help us, look at different pieces of functionality. So I mentioned the headings with the hash symbols. Now, for H1 and H2 headings, you can actually also use the equal signs and dashes. So not underscores, but dashes. So these are actually ways of defining actual headings. Of defining headings without actually having to use the traditional octothorpe, hashtag, or HTML syntaxes. So I could say heading 1 and heading 2. And underneath heading 1, I'm just going to do 3, or I guess only 2 is needed, but equal signs. And now you have a level 1 heading. That matches my level 1 heading. Heading 2, I'm going to do dashes, dash, 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 and there we go. This is why if you're messing with YAML metadata or line breaks, like here's a line break. This line break here, that's done with 3 dashes. And that's a horizontal rule. Now, the reason why this looks funny is that if you put this directly under the next line of text, this actually is a heading modifier. If I break that line, now it's a line break again. So when you're messing with YAML metadata in Obsidian, and we'll cover that way later, but you can see these are green because this is actually a YAML block. This is a line break. This is why it's gray in my theme anyways. So this is a different color, this is a different color, and this is a different color because all 3 of these things are doing different things. This is specifying YAML, this is a line break, and this is actually making this a level 2 heading. So this is a different piece of, I think this is actually a holdover from the wiki syntax for Markdown, but you can use this. Personally, I prefer to just stick with the traditional octothorpe headings with the hash symbols. It can look a little bit busier, but personally, I just prefer that. I like to have all my stuff on one line instead of having my heading and then a second line to say, hey, that's a heading. So this way, I just stick with that. So next is some font formatting. Close that one. So font formatting, we have a bunch of different options. We have bold, we have italic, and I've shown how a single or double changes those. These are the HTML. You can use I, or that's outdated, but you can use emphasis, strong for bold, B for bold, that's old. We can also use them together by doing this sort of nesting. This way you can actually do it with 3 asterisks. Personally, I just don't do that. Inline code with backticks, strike through with the double tildes. But also what they didn't say in the documents for Obsidian in the help vault for Markdown is that you can actually use super and subscript. So you can see that over here, if I did 2 caret symbols around my text, so the word work here is wrapped with carets, or you could use the HTML super tags here. So, oh, actually, this one doesn't support the Markdown. That's why. So the Markdown syntax is typically double carets and then a single tilde for super and subscript. This works in our Markdown, but not in Obsidian. So what we can do is we can actually use the HTML to do super or sup and subscript. So we can actually do elevated and sub-level text for this. We can also use underline by using the underline tag in HTML and then apply our own custom CSS styling to that. And then for strike through does exist in Obsidian by using the double tildes here, but we can also use the delete tag. So both will work just fine. And yeah, those are some additional ones. And we'll get more into that stuff later, just because some of this stuff can get a little bit more advanced and we're going to build off of some of these things. But that is the basics of all the font formatting in Obsidian. And I didn't cover highlight in here. Actually, as I modify my own personal vault on this course, is I actually need to add highlighting. So we will do this later, add a to-do. So that is pretty much all of the font formatting options in Obsidian that we have available, and including some additional ones you can do with HTML. So next we have code formatting. Now I know my face is in the way here a little bit, so just look up at the top section. So in code formatting, we did use the inline markdown where we had a single backtick and that actually inline says, hey, this is code, treat it as code. Now we can do multi-line code fences, but what if you actually want to show that code fence, you want to show the actual fence as well. So if I actually, let's just open up a copy here in preview. So if I actually open up that note, you can see that here, I'm actually able to see the code fence. So basically, if you want to show a code fence or even multiple levels of code fences, all you need to do is wrap that code fence in another code fence of an additional level. So you can see, hey, this is showing 3 backticks. That means I need to wrap it in a code fence with 4 backticks. There's nothing special that comes out of that. It's just this is how you would make a code fence appear. You could also do showing the inline code with the backtick by putting a space and then doing, again, another level upwards, 2 backticks, but you have to have that space. Otherwise, if you have all 3 next to each other, it assumes it's just a 3 backtick code fence, and it won't work. But in the same way, you could even do it, you can get as crazy with this as you want. You have a single backtick piece of code embedded inside of a double backtick piece of code inside of a triple backtick piece of code, which means that the backticks, double and single, are both visible inside of this triple backtick code fence. And you could keep going and going and going with this. Why you would do this, I don't know, but this is possible. And again, the same thing. You want to show not 3, but 4 backticks for your fence, wrap it in 5. Same thing. And you can just keep on going with that. Now, we also can, let me see here. You can, at least in our Markdown, this doesn't really apply unless you use our Markdown at all, but in our Markdown, if you actually did a single backtick and then the letter R, space, and then code, it would actually execute that R code in line in your Markdown document. So let's just say you want the result of the mean function of 5 and 10, and you want that result placed in line in text, you can do that. And I do this a lot. You can also like add bold formatting around this and it works, but that is only in our Markdown. This does not work inside of Obsidian. And then the same thing in our Markdown. If you use our Markdown, the syntax is a little bit different where you have the backticks, you have the language R, but you also can have these curly braces. And this actually has the ability to have additional control options and some really incredible pieces of functionality for our processing of code chunks in our Markdown. But again, not in Obsidian. This is just in case you use our Markdown at all, if you're in an academic setting. So I mentioned some stuff with block quotes earlier. A block quote is created by using a greater than symbol and just putting some text next to it. You need a line break. Now mine looks a little bit different because I have some fancy CSS, but this is what a block quote is. It's a single greater than symbol and then the actual text. You can also nest different levels, and this is what that looks like here. You can see we have, a break, and now even 3 levels deep, and you can go and go and go in different levels of nested quotes. If you wanted to do that. I personally have no reason to do that, but you can. You can also put Markdown inside of these block quotes and have it rendered. So like I have a level 4 heading, I have some line breaks I had to do with HTML specifically. We'll get more into that stuff later. And then the actual unordered list. And now I have a formatted block quote like this. If you wanted to do this type of work, that is possible and available to you. Next thing we're going to get into is horizontal rules. Now, typically, when we use horizontal rules, you can see that I have line breaks here. I talked about the heading earlier, where you have it directly underneath the heading, and if it wasn't already a heading here, it would actually make this heading text. Or it could be for the YAML metadata up here at the top of a file, YAML metadata coming later. But we have multiple ways of denoting horizontal rules. It's not just the 3 dashes. Let's just say you didn't want to confuse yourself with YAML metadata, the heading change stuff. I mean, this will actually still do the same operation if you put these underneath a heading, but at least it may not be the same for YAML, but I digress. You can do a horizontal rule with any of these syntaxes here. You could have 3 asterisks, 5 asterisks, a bunch of different dashes here. You could have 3 with spaces between them. They all work. So if I took all of these out of this fenced code block and I put them right here between this text, and then you can see they're all grayed out because they have the same color here. Now if I went and displayed, they all do the exact same thing. This is my custom CSS for my horizontal rule or a line, and this all does the same thing. Now the horizontal rule in HTML is just the HR tag, and it's a self-closing tag, so I could literally just remove all of these, preview it, there's nothing there. Now I could put the HR tag, preview it, and now there's an HR. So that is horizontal rules, or those horizontal lines in your file. Any of these will work for it, any of them. I personally just prefer to keep using the triple dashes just because it's what I know, and it's commonly used for everything in here. The YAML, the heading stuff, and just line breaks. So that's what I use, and that's what I use it for. Next, I have my note on lists. This is basically exactly the same as the Obsidian help vault documentation, except a couple other points I wanted to add is, let's just say you have a ordered list. You have numbers here. You don't have to do the numbers. They will reorder themselves. If you just did all 1 point whatever, they will automatically reorder themselves in preview mode. But let's just say, hey, I made a break here. Oops, I deleted that one, and I deleted it and it's gone. I have 1, 3. Does that still work? Yes. 1, 2. It will still display correctly. And we even have a line break, 3 of them. And it still determines that the list is still going, and it won't care about that white space. So why you would have the white space, I don't know. But ultimately, that link will still work, and it doesn't matter. Next is the unordered lists. You can do the lists with 3 different characters for notation of those lists. You can do dashes, asterisks, and plus signs. Now, I have some CSS that covers them with a green dot to look more aesthetically pleasing. If I did multiple cursors, you can actually see what each symbol is. We have a dash, a plus, an asterisk, and a dash again. Now, if I render this, they're all the same. They are all treated the same. Now, when I type an asterisk, it assumes I'm trying to make bold or italic text, so it inserts a second one. That's why it's just more of a hassle to just use asterisks. So I just prefer just use dashes. Plus signs require a shift and then a key press. So dashes don't. It's just dash. There you go. And then you have an unordered list. So that is all I have for unordered lists, and that's it. Now you can make them tasks by adding, it doesn't even matter if it's an asterisk or a plus sign. If you add those square brackets, it's still going to be a task. But yeah, so it doesn't matter. And I still prefer to use the dashes because it's easier and simpler. So next we have Markdown Links. Now, with links, there are several different ways we can use links in Obsidian. We can use a lot of the traditional Markdown link syntax, and we can also use the Wikilink syntax. Now, there are certain advantages and disadvantages to either. Now, when it comes to Markdown links, and we'll just go through the syntax of what all of them look like, and then we'll look at the Obsidian links, and we'll explain a little bit about why you should use one or the other, in which situations, and depending on what you are aiming to do, which might be the better choice. So the Markdown link works as you have a pair of square brackets, and in that square brackets is what your display text is. So for instance, if below this heading syntax, if I put in my name, Bryan, inside a single pair of square brackets, not double. Double is the wiki syntax. Now with a single pair of square brackets followed by a pair of parens, this now you can see changes to a link with a little icon showing like, it's going to open something externally. Now inside here you can put a link, a URL, a website, a URI link to something like in Zotero or Obsidian. It really, you put your URL here. So I could just put my website, and now if I click this, it actually will open up my website in my browser. That is a link. So we also have the ability to just post raw links. So beneath the syntax heading, I can put my website and it works exactly the same. It doesn't look as nice, but it's going to go to the same place, do the same thing. Now, I'm not really sure what this is supposed to do or if it's even useful for anything, but you can actually wrap these URLs in angle brackets. It doesn't change or do much of anything that I can see. Not sure why anyone would want to do that, but that's a thing. We also have the ability to link to specific headings in a document. So for instance, I have a heading down here called test. Now, if I create a link up here above where it says syntax, I could say go to test, and now the link is going to be a hash mark and then test. So if I click this link now, it will actually take me to that heading within the document. If you have a very large, long-form document, that might be something you want to do. Ultimately, though, we do still have the outline, which will do the exact same thing. So, it's not really as useful unless maybe you're doing this and using these files in different programs or systems, in which case maybe that's a piece of functionality you want in a different application, and it will just also work in Obsidian. Either way, you can use those to link to specific headings. Now, we also have the ability to change font formatting on those links. So for instance, we can actually, let's just say, I'm going to select all of this and we're going to wrap it in highlighting. And now you can see that hey, we can actually change the syntax of those links or how they're displayed. And we can also say make it italic, and you can see the text goes italic. Maybe not the color like I have in edit mode, but the italic text is represented. But if you do wrap it in backticks for code, it actually invalidates the link because it's saying, hey, explicitly just write this text. So be careful with that type of formatting on your links. Now, we also have the ability to do links in the wiki syntax within Obsidian, which is the double angle brackets. Now, with this one, it's similar in a way. You can't do external links. So my website, it wouldn't work if I did angle brackets and I did my website. It's going to think I'm trying to create a page in Obsidian with the name of my website. That doesn't work. But one thing you can do in here is if we had a page called Markdown, we can actually change the display text like we did here, where the link is actually my URL, but I said Bryan's website or my name. We can actually do that with the pipe character, and then we could say example, whatever, and that will be the display text. This is where aliases come in later on, and all of this Wikilink Obsidian specific stuff will be covered in gross detail later on. But that is like changing display text on specific links. Now, those links are not footnotes, but we can actually use footnotes. I think we already covered that already. But one thing we can also do is, like footnotes, split up the declaration and definition of these links. So for instance, I can have a link up here that just says in angle brackets, what's the display text? The display text is my name. And then in another pair of square brackets, we're just going to say, the number 1. Now, right now, this isn't displaying anything because there's no link defined. We haven't referenced anything. We haven't set up a link. But let's say all the way down at the bottom of the document, if that's where I want to keep all my links, maybe I just want to keep it somewhere else around here. It doesn't matter. We're just going to put the bottom. So now we've declared our link, but we haven't defined it. Where is it going? What is it doing? So now I could say, hey, number 1. So the 1 is what links it. So this is where normally the link goes. It's now number 1. Number 1, what is that definition? You can see my example already here, spoiler. I could say, oh, it changed color, kind of like the footnotes. It turned a little gray, indented itself. Now, if I put my website there, if we go back to the top of the document, now this is a link and an external link in Markdown syntax. This will open up my website in my browser. And when rendered, there's nothing at the bottom. It's just now the link is defined. We declared it, we defined it. And it doesn't matter where you define it, as long as those IDs, that number 1, matches. Now, one thing that I don't like about Markdown links that I try to avoid when I use them is spaces. Now, this is something I noticed way early on when I was working with SharePoint and different Microsoft software at work, which is space characters and certain other protected characters in URL sequences are actually recoded as special escape sequences, which is, in this case, what you really need to know, or that you might notice if you use Obsidian Publish, is that certain characters are replaced by these types of codes. This %20 is actually the representation of a space. So I don't really have a great example of a website that has a space in it, because there's not a lot of people who try to break convention or really deal with that type of stuff. But you can actually notice this when you look at URLs that actually have spaces. And if you see a %20, that's actually the representation of a space. So for instance, if my website actually had a space in it, so let's let's do this, Bryan, and then my website. Now, if I actually had a space in between my name here, that actually breaks the link. You can see that this actually breaks the actual link in Obsidian. And we don't want that, obviously. But if I actually remove that space and put %20, the link is actually maintained. And that's because that is what Markdown perceives to be a space. But it's represented by that escape sequence. So that is one thing that you need to pay attention to, is if you're going to use Markdown links, you actually have to escape all the spaces with that %20. And if you're using Markdown links for your internal Obsidian notes, which is something you can do. So for instance, we can say Markdown, and then we can just link to Markdown.md. Yes, okay, so that works, because it doesn't matter, I guess the casing didn't matter. Anyway, so we can hover, yes, this works. But if I had something, so for instance, this very page, Markdown We need to actually fix some of this stuff. My CSS is messing with it. So we're going to do Markdown with a capital M, and we're going to do space links. So this exact page, you can see the link doesn't work, but when we actually escape it with a %20, I can hover over, and now we're actually looking at the very page that we're on. And that's something that you're going to pay attention to. If you use Markdown links inside of Obsidian to refer to your internal Obsidian files in your vault, you're going to have to escape all of those space characters. If you have very long file names like I do that are very descriptive of the note, it's going to be a pain to manage, which is one reason why I do not use Markdown links for my internal links for my files. If you use the Wikilinks, I can say Markdown links, and you can see the spaces can be spaces. They display exactly like that, and they work. And that's particularly why I use them and prefer them. And just because the Wikilinks are actually not a solely Obsidian thing. It actually is a little bit more future-proof because there are other pieces of software that do use Wikilinks, such as, we have Zetler, we have Rome Research does it. If you ever took your stuff and put it in Rome, I think Notion uses it now. We also have VimWiki, and there's a variety of other softwares that use the Wikilink Markdown specification. And so this isn't something that's going to lock you in, which is why I prefer to just use them. And there's a lot of other things that Obsidian allows you to do, heading links, aliases, block references. There's a lot of stuff we can do with these Wikilinks. So I prefer and advise just use the Wikilinks. It's less headache. And yeah, I mean, if you do really want to use the internal Markdown links, there is a setting. I believe it's either in here or it's in the core plugins where you can actually change to use Markdown links automatically. I'm not really familiar because I never use it, so I'm not really exactly sure where it is. It might be in here, shortest link when possible. Either way, there is a setting that you can change all of your links to automatically be Markdown links, and it will do that %20 space stuff for you, I believe. And that takes the edge off of it if you really, really want to use Markdown links. But again, I usually just say, why? Don't bother. But to each their own. Your mileage may vary, and your use case might require you to do that. So that is links. This one is a little bit more of something that's going to come up later as we get into more of the advanced material. But if you ever need to use a protected character and you're in HTML space, not just Markdown space. So if we're actually in, for instance, I have a template for 2 columns, and this will actually be a bunch of Markdown or HTML. So we could put something here, and then we could have something here, and you have 2 columns. So if you're inside this space and you try to put an ampersand, that will probably work, but sometimes these are actually protected characters and you need to use HTML escape sequences to utilize them. A backslash isn't really going to work here because you can see the backslash actually displays. So to actually escape that character when you are in HTML space, you need to use the HTML escape sequence. In this case, it actually is an ampersand followed by the phrase amp and then a semicolon. And now you can see right over here that it actually changes colors. So right now it's red. It's red when I just have a ampersand. If I add AMP and then a semicolon, it changes to blue. This is an escaped HTML sequence. And we can actually use this in Markdown space if you had a particular reason to. So you can see I have just a straight ampersand escaped with backticks that displays. With backticks, I can actually display the escape code. But when I just do the escape code and I make it bold, you can see it actually displays a red ampersand over here. So this isn't going to be, you're probably not going to care about this very much. You might never actually have to use this, but in case you need to use a protected character when you are dealing with raw HTML inside your document, you might need to actually escape something, and just know that these escape sequences exist for these particular protected characters, especially if you're going to do anything with these brackets this way, because those are actually protected because it's going to think that you're working with another HTML tag. So that is just something to be aware of as we go through the advanced material and get more into the custom embedded HTML inside of Markdown documents. So a lot of the Markdown syntax that I've actually already talked about with you has actually been part of the standard or most standard Markdown specifications. Now, Markdown was actually a very simple, minimal, lightweight syntax to abstract a lot of the HTML syntax away so we could just write in plain text, no weird tagging stuff, and just have some special characters that created HTML elements and formatting on the other end after processing. Now, there's a lot of extensions and extended functionality on Markdown to allow for a lot of other additional features and customizations and things we can do with it that go beyond just the standard specifications. Now, we're going to go over a lot of these and which ones we can actually use in Obsidian that you might want to take advantage of. So the first and one of my favorite extensions to Markdown that I love to use in Obsidian is Footnotes. Now, Footnotes are similar to Markdown Links in that you can actually separate them by having a declaration and a definition, or just put them all in line and you actually use square brackets. So there are several ways of using and defining footnotes. So down here at the bottom, I'm just going to jump right here. You can see that I have this text here, and this is saying, hey, this is what block looks like. It has this square bracket with a caret and a 1, and then this actually references this footnote down here. This is an indented link, indented block, whatever, and that is actually the footnote. So with that footnote, we can actually change this identifier. We have caret 1, and so the square brackets with the caret inside is saying, hey, it's a footnote, and then the 1 can be whatever we want it to be that unique identifier of that footnote. So we could change this to be something like, I don't know, blink, whatever. It doesn't matter, because it's basically saying, hey, link those two things together. This is the first footnote on the page, so the display just says number 1. And that's why the numbering is really just whichever footnote it encounters first. So for instance, if I put another one up here, and I can put square brackets, a caret, and I could say 3 or 2, let's just do 2. And then down here, I can actually put a bracket caret 2, and then display it. And this is saying def. Which is, yeah, def. Okay, so that is actually an additional one, and you can see that def is actually listed as number 1 now. I said explicitly number 2, it's defined after this one, but it doesn't matter. The declaration appears before this one. So they're in the display, they're actually numbered in the order in which they appear. So that's it. Really, the numbers inside the brackets are just to say, hey, link this one to that definition. So it's just that unique identifier. Now, that's one way of splitting up your footnotes by saying, hey, here's a footnote, and then that's what it is later on. Personally, what I like to do is I don't like to have things split or have different pieces in different places. It's just, I don't want to hold that type of stuff in my head. And so one thing we can do is actually write our footnotes in line. Now, it can look a little ugly depending on what you're doing and how long you have like file names. Like personally, I have really long file names. So sometimes this can be a little much, but it really is just up to your particular preference. Now, what I like to do is if I was going to have a footnote, and let's just put it right here, I'm a single pair of square brackets, bam, right there. So one thing you can do is you can actually insert a caret, 2 square brackets. Right now, oh, it already displays as a footnote. There's nothing it links to because there's nothing in there. But now I can put in, this is a footnote. There we go, that's it. So now this footnote actually will link to that text. And this is really useful because it's a single one-time place, declaration and definition all in one. All I have to do is take those square brackets, put my content inside, and the caret outside. Like you can think of the caret as like, hey, raise this to the power of this footnote. So really just like the way it displays these links, like as superscript. So that is how I like to think about it. And one really powerful feature of doing footnotes this way too is that inside this inline footnote, I can actually do my wikilinks with 2 more sets of brackets. And now I can actually link to something like this exact page. And now this footnote is actually linking to this page. So if I went down to this footnote right here, it'll actually take me down to the footnote area, but this is the link to the page. So in this way, what I actually use that for is linking to other note pages just as footnotes that are defined and displayed down at the bottom. So with this inline method, you can do that, or you could also just have the definition have a link in that as well. Either one will work, and it really just depends on how you want to do it and approach it. that's just how I prefer to do it. Now, what if you have a piece of content in a footnote, like this separate declaration like this, and you want to have multiple lines of content, not just one long string of text? Well, if you actually indent an additional block, so we could have more of it here, more of it there, and then at the bottom, it'll actually display that whole block of content. I don't think a line break does not work with that, but if you have it all broken out on separate lines, then it will actually display this block as a single unit for that footnote definition. And that's Footnotes in a nutshell. Not all Markdown specifications have this feature, but the ones that do, I really enjoy it because I love this piece of functionality. So hopefully you find this one useful as well. Now, another really useful extension is the ability to insert tables inside of Markdown. Things like GitHub support this, and several other Markdown editors, programs, and specifications support tables, but tables are actually one of those extended pieces of functionality. Now, to use tables in Markdown, you utilize a lot of pipe characters, the vertical line that is above your enter key or return key, and a couple dashes. So really you need three things to make a table. You need a row for header names, you need a separator row just to separate headings from data, and then a single data row. So for instance, this right here, these first three lines is really all you need to display your own table, and that's it. I have an additional one here just to explain something else. So all we have is, those three lines. So now when we go through this, what are some things we can do with tables? So first of all, there's not a lot by themselves that tables can do, but there are some things that we can change, such as formatting and alignment. So for instance, in the separator row, where you place semicolons actually will determine the alignment of the content in that column. So if you put semicolon on the left-hand side of the separator like this, it will actually left align your content. If you put them on the right-hand side, it will actually right align your content. Let's see here. So actually it does this in edit mode, but not in display mode for some reason. But in edit mode anyways, it will. And then also we have the double semicolon, which actually will center content. And again, not sure why it's not doing it in display, because it does do this in edit mode for the exact same content. Maybe that's just because of the plugin I have installed, but either way, there are some great plugins that we'll go over that deal with tables. One of them makes it easy to add, edit, update, insert, remove columns and data inside of tables, and it's just called Advanced Tables. And then there's one that will actually let you use formulas with those tables, kind of like Excel formulas. I haven't really had a reason to use that one, but we will cover it just because it might be something that is useful to you if you want to keep literally your entire life inside of plain text in Markdown. Now, one cool thing that we can actually do with tables is we can insert different pieces of, not necessarily functionality, but different pieces of content. So we can actually change font formatting, insert images and links inside of Markdown tables. And what that might look like, live coding example. So for instance, I can insert a template I have for a table. And again, if you don't know what templates are, we'll get to that. So inside we have let's just call this image. We're going to call this one a link. And then we're going to call format. There we go. And then we're going to say this one is going to be a image. I have an image called spaced repetition, PNG. We'll put that in there. And then we're going to have a link over here. We're just going to call this one Markdown Links. But I want to actually change the alias on this, but we'll cover that in a second. So format, pretty much most of the font formatting you've seen already that we've covered can be utilized. So for instance, I'm going to put some code in here. I'm going to do backticks. I'm going to say hello, if I can spell, hello world. And then as I enter, when I press enter, some things are automatically formatted. This is actually because of the plugin I'm using. Otherwise, it does not format nicely like this. So be aware of that. Now when I render, hey, we got an image inside of our table. Now the CSS I have pops this out. Normally it's just displayed image, but hey, also a link and code, all displayed in the same table. Now something to be aware of that you'll have to be careful about is if I just take this exact link, the Markdown link I have, and I put it in the field below. Let's say I want to use an alias or display different text. I just want to say, hey, links, because that's what I want. So now, oh, the table just reformatted, but you can guess what's going to happen is that now there's some weirdness going on here. Why is my alias not working? Why is it displayed? in a separate column. Well, as you can see, this pipe character here is part of the Markdown table. Because the Markdown tables use pipes, and pipes are used to specify aliases or display text for Markdown links, you need to escape it. So that means a backslash before that pipe character. Now, when I go to the next page, or the next tab or column, hey, it didn't break itself. When I render, it displays the alias, and the link still works exactly as I would expect it to. So with this, you can actually display files, images, links. We can transclude content inside of tables. And something fun that I've actually done is including tables within tables. So for instance, if I had a table such as, let's just call this one code. Oops. Let's just put that back there. So if I call this one code and then result, and then I say, let's just say this one is print hello world. Okay, we go to the next one and the text is just hello world. Cool, that's all we really need to do there. Great, so now I want to actually insert this table inside of my existing table. Now what I can do is I can just say, hey, open up a link. Oops, wrong area. Go there, open up a link, use the caret symbol to do a block reference, find my, oh yes, code result, there, yep, that's it. Okay, now we have a link there. Okay, it's just displaying the block reference. Now you may not know yet what we're going to be doing with this because we haven't covered Wikilinks and all the Obsidian stuff. That's coming up at the end of this particular section. So don't worry too much about what I'm doing. It will all be explained. So when I put the bang, or the exclamation point in front of that block reference to transclude it, now we have a table within our table. Because we have a block reference to this whole item, we can now reference that item and insert it into this table. And this is actually something really useful I did when I was explaining the table transformations on SQL tables from using particular joins, and I wanted to insert tables within tables. So for instance, I could do left join, put that there, and now you can see, actually maybe not that one, join. Well, I did have some that you may find interesting. I think it may have been the apply operators. Well, they were somewhere. In either case, I was inserting tables within tables to show the difference in the transformations from one section to another based on whatever operation was occurring. And you may find that type of functionality useful. You can actually insert additional notes. So really, one thing you can actually do is take these Markdown tables and make a Kanban board with them by saying, hey, I have a note called to do, a note called done, and a note called in process or in progress or whatever. And inside of those three notes, you could have, checklist items like these item, and inside of those files, you just have these, checkbox items. And then when you display them in these 3-column tables for your Kanban board, you can actually edit them right then and there and basically have a Kanban system for your own tasks. And I think I remembered which one it was. Yes, here's an example. So for instance, using the union operator in SQL, you can see I have 3 block references, 3 tables defined here at the bottom, and then a table of those tables. And showing an example of here's what it looks like, table 1, table 2, and then union shows the combination of them. So like you can insert tables within tables. And that might be a useful feature for you. You might find that useful, maybe not. But tables can be pretty flexible in Obsidian and in Markdown in general. So hopefully that was interesting and helpful. So my approach to this whole course is that a lot of these different pieces of functionality are all networked and connected to a lot of the other pieces of functionality. And there's a lot of overlap. Basically, like Obsidian and your whole linking system involved, is that everything ties to everything else. So my approach to this kind of is a little bit of a jumping around approach and just covering things incrementally until we get a holistic view of everything going on, just because there is so much and it affects and connects to so much else inside the system. So some of these other pieces of functionality that we have extended functionality for have already been covered in some respects. So for instance, fenced code block syntax highlighting. The syntax highlighting specifically, this is where you can actually see the actual color of the code. Now it's not displayed here because I'm actually displaying those pieces of content in that way. But if we actually had a code block there, you can see both in edit and preview mode, we have syntax highlighting. That is, I believe, an extension to Markdown and the whole fenced code block area of it having the ability to say, oh, a language, I know what that language is, process that, and show me specific colors of that language. Now, fenced code blocks in of itself, it is a piece of extended functionality in Markdown. So this is something that we do make a lot of use of, and even just the displaying of code blocks and extended code block fences like these forward backticks around 3, I already covered in a prior section. So that's all I'm going to cover on that. Next, we have heading IDs. This is something that is not explicitly used in Obsidian as much as using them in like things like R Markdown or how they're actually used in HTML, where we actually define the a link to syntax here or whatever the file or the heading might be. So for instance, in this file, I'm going to say a heading called test. Now I could actually say I have a heading name. We already did a link before where we did this link before where we said, hey, test is going to link to hash test. And in preview mode, this actually does show you that specific heading. It will jump you to that heading within this document. Now, one thing I actually haven't tried that you may find interesting is that if I actually have a link to an HTML link, A, which is the actual link, href for the actual link, we're going to link it to hashtag test, and then we're going to close it off and close off the tag, and we're going to say test. So now when I render, it'll say, oh, test, that's, oh, whoops, I accidentally messed that up there. So now when I actually render that, it just says test. It doesn't show me a preview, but when I click it, yeah, nothing. So the HTML links don't work as this might work, where we actually have a link to that item. But in Markdown links, you can actually use those hash links to go to specific headings. And normally how you might target those is H3 with an ID of a custom ID. And then in R Markdown, for instance, you can actually reference and define what you actually want this heading to be called by using this syntax with curly braces and defining the custom ID to target it with other different things or add some meta options. For instance, in Flex Dashboard in R Markdown, you might not know or care what that is at all, but just know that this way of referencing headings is useful in other forms and implementations of Markdown and how Markdown is used in other applications and formats. So you might find that interesting. It may just be superfluous information. Either way, that is something that exists. We also have definition lists. I don't really use these in Obsidian, but you might. You might want to use these if you like defining terms and seeing definition lists. So normally in Markdown, now in Obsidian, this is not a format that works. You would do the name of your term followed by a line break, a colon, and then the definition of that term. This does not work in Obsidian. This does not display anything other than exactly how that text appears. So if I put that in there, actually, let's put it this way, do that, and then paste. So exactly like that, that should display something. It does not. It just shows the exact plain text. Whereas if we actually used the embedded HTML, again, more on that coming later, we can actually do a definition list like this, a definition list, the definition term, and the definition. That's why you have DL, DT, and DD. And you can just repeat different terms and data. You can have a second line, a second definition of data if you have an additional DD tag. And this will actually display on websites like this, but in Obsidian, it will render like this. It will just indent those those secondary items without the formatting of the normal indent that turns it blue like code text, where you have it like that. So, you may find that useful. You may use that. You might not. I personally don't use it, but it's something interesting. There's a lot of HTML that we can use within Obsidian, and this is one of those pieces. And we're going to get into task lists next. All right, so task lists. These are actually an extension to Markdown. Now you can also use these on places like GitHub or other applications that use Markdown. And I really like using these, and I do have some custom CSS that changes how they are displayed. So you can see the round circle, the check mark, all this stuff, and including the animation. All this is custom CSS. Normally you'll just see this display, and you'll see it turn gray if it's completed. That's like the basic. Now, using task lists, it's exactly the same thing as a list that we covered earlier, and you do use dashes, and you can indent them, but all you have to add is an opening pair of brackets around a space for an uncompleted task, like here. And if you put an X inside, that will be the completed task. Now, in preview mode in Obsidian, you'll actually see some sort of display. Now, I have mine styled a particular way here. Now, Obsidian might just have a default display of some like blue checkbox when it's done, and you can actually check and uncheck and complete these tasks in preview mode just by clicking like you saw me do earlier. This is a cool piece of functionality, so you can actually have a task list in Obsidian and just click instead of having to type all of your X's to complete those tasks. A really useful feature. Now, when you actually have different tasks indented underneath parent tasks, you can see I have this one is completed. This is an incomplete child task, but its parent is completed. So it actually does get a line through, but it doesn't look the same as this one that is actually completed. If I click that, now it actually does look that way. So that is something useful to know. And that's basically all there is to tasks. There's a lot of other plugins that are making use of the task lists and different pieces of functionality around tasks, but that's really all there is to know about them. You can format the text inside of these task items. So for instance, I could say, hey, this word is going to be formatted as code that way, and that will work. And that's it. You can do pretty much any other sort of text processing that you would normally do in a list and just make it a checkable item. Now, something really useful that is pretty commonly used in Markdown, especially for people who take notes and don't want to deal with all of the overhead that comes from writing notes in pure LaTeX, is actually using Mathjax inside of Markdown files, which is the way of displaying formulas and equations for math and statistics and whatever inside of Markdown files. Now, Mathjax is an extension to Markdown. It's not in all specifications, and thankfully, Obsidian does have Mathjax, so we can actually do equations and inline equations, and we don't need to use all the syntax of LaTeX. We could just take advantage of just the equation formatting of this. And now, using Mathjax is as simple as a pair of dollar signs and writing your equation inside of it. Now, to write your equation, you're going to have to know some LaTeX and how to actually write LaTeX equations. So for instance, we have the sum of pi being divided by sigma. That is nothing. That's just me pulling out symbols out of thin air. But really what that looks like is, declaring sum and then a fraction of pi and then sigma. And this actually displays this equation. This single dollar sign equation is an inline equation, which means it just goes straight to the left. You can actually display it in line with your text. So if I went right over to here, basic syntax, I'm going to put a pair of dollar signs, and inside, you can see it changed color already. Inside, I'm going to declare pi, and when I render, now the pi symbol is in line with that text. That is what I mean by an inline LaTeX math equation. Now, if you do $2 signs, this actually centers the equation in the middle of the screen, just like this. So this way, you're actually able to have a centered display of whatever your equation you're talking about, or you can actually show this and then have like your text explaining it and show a step-by-step process as you go through your document. Either one of these works. If you're going to do inline, you want them aligned to the left like this, you could just put them on a new line and have things separated that way. But if you want them centered, all you have to do is wrap them with double dollar signs. And so, as you can see, this is the same thing as this, other than it just has an additional set of dollar signs, and it will display in the center just like that. Now we're going to get into some of the meat of Obsidian. So Obsidian uses the wikilink syntax. This is an again additional extension of Markdown and its original specification. Now, there's several other pieces of functionality that the developers of Obsidian have added to these Markdown links, and this extends what we can do with them and really makes this the first-class citizen, the preferred method of linking things inside of Obsidian. And that's why we use it, is because there's so many other things we can do with it that it is the method of linking that gets the most attention, focus, and development. And that is the wikilinks, the two square brackets that link things together. Now, here are some examples of all the different things we can do with Wikilinks, and we're going to go over them line by line. So, first of all, I already explained in Markdown Links about the difference between using Markdown Links versus Obsidian links and how you have to use those escape sequences for spaces. And also, it's also just more to type. You have to actually list out the file extension. You have to cover for escape sequences for special characters and spaces. You have your additional section for just the display text versus Wikilinks. It's literally just the name of the document. Spaces are fine. You don't have to have the file extension. It's just the name of the document. And it looks better when displayed as well. So that's why I choose to use the Wikilinks. So for instance, I could say, hey, Markdown Links, and that's it. It displays beautifully. That's it. That's all I need to do. And that's what I prefer to use them for. But I don't like it saying Markdown Links. I want to actually change it to just say links. This is where aliases, or in this case, display text, come in. You can define aliases in the YAML front matter. That will be coming later on. We'll explain that. But all you need to know is that I can put a pipe here and then change it to links. And now that is all that is displayed there. I can change the display text of my wiki link easily. A single character and then what I want it to actually say. Very simple and easy to understand. Now, one thing we also have is the ability to link to specific headings in a document. So let's actually add some headings here, just so we have an example to work with. So now, inside of this document, I'm going to create a brand new wiki link. Now, I could link to this page, so Wikilinks, there we go. And then I could say, hey, hash symbol, link me to a particular heading. Okay, cool. This actually says H4, H1. Yep, because this is a level 4 heading, a level 1 heading. Great. But what we could also do is I'm going to open up a link here. And now you can see maybe it's a little faint, but I'm actually scrolling through these options and I currently have this current file highlighted. So that's basically saying, okay, I'm going to pick that file, but we can actually autocomplete. We could autocomplete with tab, and that would actually put the name of the file in there and leave our cursor inside the link, so we could also then do our hash mark instead of having to put in the link and then navigate back into the link, etc. But now if I just hover over that particular link and then I press hash, it automatically inserts the link and the hash, and now I'm ready to go directly to heading. This way it's easier to just get directly to the piece of functionality you want to go to. So now I could say, hey, yep, we're going to pick tags, insert tags there, and now this actually refers to tags, which is this section, and it will show me everything in that section until it occurs or happens across a heading of equal or greater level of precedence. So if this was an H2, reference was an H2, then that would actually be included when I hover over this, because H1 would include that H2 heading. Now, I might actually need to have some content in there for it to actually display. Test, or whatever, just put some content in here. And now if I hover over, it should, yes, display both tag and reference, because that is a subordinate tag, an H1 and an H2. You can see referenced by the level of octothorpes we have here. Now, that is linking to headings in an internal document. The same thing works if we went to any other document. It doesn't have to be internal, like to this specific file. I could say, hey, we looked at Mathjax earlier. Same thing. Hash symbol, show me the headings. And that's all you really need to do. And so that's linking to headings across this exact file or any other file in your vault. We can also say, hey, I want to link to that Mathjax file again. And I want to actually do hash, so I can actually change the display. Hold on a second. So I want to say link, and we're going to go to Mathjax. I'm going to do a hash to link to a heading. We're going to link to the H4, which is basically just that. But in Mathjax, I want that one. Great. But now I want to actually change what is displayed. Like this, that's a lot there. I don't want all of that displayed. I'm just going to put a pipe right in the center of that link, and it will actually let me change the display text. Strange, I think it was because it was on the end of a line. But in any case, so I've inserted the heading for Mathjax to Markdown Mathjax. That looks really excessive and ugly with how much text is displayed. I could just go to the end of that. So we have the main link, the reference to the header, and now we can put a pipe and say math. That's it. And now that's all that's displayed. So we've just combined two pieces of functionality, a link to an internal file, a link to its exact heading inside of that file, and then the display of what that entire link construct should look like. And all of this will work exactly as intended. This is the file, that's what I wanted to display, and it only says math. Perfect. So going further along with this, we also have the ability to reference blocks of content inside of our files. So this is a block. Hello. Now we're going to actually reference something inside of this file. So I could do a link. Now to insert a block inside of the current file, we can do a single caret symbol. And now I get to see all the blocks inside of this entire file. Hey, there it is. This is a block. Hello. Cool. Now you can see, what is this? What is this? We're going to get more into block references later on and in more detail, but a block reference is basically auto-generated a 6-character hash uniquely identifying this block of content. You can see it formats a little bit like Footnotes, where it displays as supertext and it has a caret symbol raising the hash. And now I have a hash symbol or an octothorpe and the caret and then the actual hash identifier here. Okay, weird. So now if I look at this link, it displays that weird text. If I hover, it actually displays the preview of that block. Okay, but now what we can also do is change the display with a pipe and say, this is a block. Cool. So that way we're actually able to do all of that. Now, one thing that we can do also with that, now that a block reference and hash exists inside of this file, is I can say, hey, this file, Wikilinks, now, just like we did the octothorpe to complete and look for a heading, we can then do a caret and look for blocks inside of this file. Now, inside of this file, we already have a block, so we can see, oh, this one actually has a hash, and we can reference exactly to that block. And it will then autocomplete. We could also probably just tab, so we could do caret from there, and then find our block, and then tab to complete, or also just do the pipe. Oh, I guess we do have to tab to complete on the blocks then. Tab to complete, and then pipe, and now we can change to block and display text. So then we're doing the exact same thing. So instead of the octothorpe saying, hey, look at headings, we follow it with a caret saying, not headings, look at blocks. We find one that actually had a block reference, and then we change its display text. All of these pieces of functionality really increase the power of these internal links, and they're just incredible. So the next thing we also have with these internal links is the ability to actually transclude pieces of content, blocks, entire headings, entire files, images, everything. So what is transclusion, transcluded? What does that mean? So trans means, changing from one to another or a different source, and clude to include. So basically we're including pieces from other documents or other sources and putting them across each other. So what that looks like is basically everything we've already done, but you include an exclamation point at the beginning of the line. So this block reference, this is a block, hello, is chosen here. And you can see, we have the actual reference to just the hash. We have some display text that actually displays, the preview shows it. Yep, cool, whatever. Now, if we then insert a exclamation point, that will include that block. The display text isn't shown at all anymore, and this block is actually shown and displayed here. Where this becomes really useful is if you're embedding blocks of content into other files, and you have a lot of blocks from all over your vault, all referenced in a single place, and you want to have them all shown in a single document as you are working on it. And this works not only just for block content, but also for headings. So for instance, we had a reference to Markdown Wikilinks, to the heading, says tags, which includes that block, and we can hover, see the preview. Yep, that's what I want. Now we can transclude that, and that includes the entire section, everything under tags until it occurs or happens across a heading of equal or greater standing, which in this case is the first level heading of related. The same thing would work like this. If I made this a 3, this one a level 2 heading, it would then happen across a level 1 heading, and again does the same thing. It says, oh, that's the level of scope that I have. Everything level 2 and deeper until I encounter something of higher order. Now that only displays that. But the transclusion is including everything from tags below until it encounters something of a greater level of scope. Now that is headings. We can also embed entire files. So if I did Markdown Links, just the name of this file, and then inserted that with a bang, now the entire file is embedded. And we also have the name of the file embedded at the top. This only happens when you are working with the actual entire file. And you can see that we've just included the entire content of a file inside of another file. Now, because this is actually referring to itself, you're going to see we're going to get a little meta here, and we're going to have multiple levels of file embedding of the same thing looking at itself. Now, thankfully, this isn't going to be like a race condition or anything like where it overflows memory, because the most we have is 5 links to it. So it will refer to itself 5 levels deep, and then it just stops doing this. It doesn't go off into infinity. But that is something that you can be aware of, is that you might actually reference itself and have it go off and display multiple levels of itself. But in any case, that is transclusion, of including pieces of content, blocks, headings, and files inside of other blocks, headings, and files. And one thing that is also able to be done is we can actually include images the same way. So I can actually, first of all, link to an image I have called spacerepetition.png. You can see it's in my media folder. That is an image file. If I link to that, cool. If I hover, it shows the image. If I click on it, it actually opens up the image. But I want to actually insert that image into my document. Add a bang, there we go. Image is now in my file, and that's it. The same thing will also work for, I believe, actually having this file be hyperlinked to something. So we have a wiki link to the image file. We are transcluding it and putting it inside of our document. But now I want this image to actually be hyperlinked to a URL. We can actually wrap this wiki link inside of a Markdown link, which is a pair of square brackets and then parens for a link, and then saying, hey, let's go to my website. And now clicking on this little image thing right here. Now mine are centered because of some CSS I have. Normally this will actually just be displayed to the left as like the default format, and it won't do this pop-up thing. But then I have a link here to my image that actually will open up a link to my website. So you might make use of that, you might not, but it is functionality that exists. One thing that's really cool about all of this linking and all the different pieces of functionality we have in Obsidian is you can nest and link and connect a lot of things in a lot of weird ways that may not seem intuitive at first. And it is really useful and interesting to see how we can bend different pieces of linking functionality to do things like having 3 files inserted into a table that are basically acting as a Kanban board, or putting tables inside of tables with transcluded block references, which is a lot of technical terminology to say that you can put stuff inside of stuff, and it's really cool. So I really geek out about this exact type of functionality, and I think it's really, really neat. And hopefully you take full advantage of this and reap some rewards by using this inside of your own vault and system. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned a lot about what you can do with Markdown in Obsidian and a variety of other applications and pretty much anywhere else. Markdown is a very flexible tool, and hopefully you learned some really cool stuff. A quick note before we go, thank you to the Patreon patrons and GitHub sponsors who support this channel. None of this is ever required or expected, and I appreciate absolutely everyone who feels that they enjoy my work enough to support and sponsor the channel. Thank you. That said, I will catch you all in the next one.